The war for the realm drags the armies of the crown deep into the mud. Lord Pyre sits entrenched within the war-torn Riverlands, establishing a massive staging ground for the grueling military campaign ahead. Standing directly at his side are the young Lord Paramount Oscar Tully and the hardened Northern Commander Roderick Dustin. Together, this uneasy alliance maps out the next brutal phase of their campaign, bracing for a march that will decide the fate of the Iron Throne. The fragile alliance faces immediate disaster as Roderick Dustin returns to the command tent with a grim report, warning that another vital crossing has been completely burned and they might never reach Tumbleton. The Northern Commander turns to Lord Peter Piper, demanding to know how long it will take to rebuild the massive structure, only for Piper to counter that the army must find another crossing and take the long, agonizing way around the creek. Oscar Tully declares that the Queen will abhor this delay, instantly ordering Piper to take 100 of his fastest riders, make a hard push for Stony September, and secure the local barge immediately. Piper points out that the detour will put their march back by a full week, but Oscar holds firm, stating it is their absolute last chance to ford the river with the army before the war is lost. Roderick Dustin exits the meeting with his personal guard, leaving Piper alone in the camp with the young Lord Paramount. As the two men discuss the brutal hardships of the campaign, Piper bitterly complains that the army continues to suffer the freezing cold while Criston Cole's band of hunters keeps hounding them, swarming around the host like bitter deer flies, the one torment they never have to endure in the north. Oscar replies that he would rather deal with savage deer flies than be forced to endure Cole's legendary cruelty, whether in the north or the south. Sensing an opening, Piper begs to loose his northern wolves on the hunt to bring the Kingsguard down, but Oscar responds thoughtfully, suggesting they could play Cole's game instead. Meanwhile, the focus shifts to Roderick Dustin as he walks back to his personal section of the camp. The veteran commander catches a suspicious noise and steps outside his tent, only to discover that his personal guards have already been silently slaughtered in the dark. Moments later, an unseen bladesman lunges from the shadows, striking Dustin down as Cole's elite forces breach the perimeter. Suddenly, the coordinated midnight attack begins, and Cole's army sets the tents ablaze. Chaos erupts throughout the camp, soldiers scream that they are under attack, and fierce fighting breaks out in every direction under a sky filled with fire. Across the Riverlands, the focus shifts to the haunted, ruined halls of Harrenhal. 3 armed soldiers search the cavernous castle, hunting down the elusive Prince Aemon Targaryen. As they navigate the eerie, shadow-drenched corridors, they suddenly encounter Alice Rivers standing dead in their path. The wood which calmly tells the men that if she had known they were expecting guests, she would have made up the bed. One of the soldiers steps forward, demanding Aemon Targaryen, but Alice answers with a faint, knowing smile, stating that ever since the ungrateful Queen Rhaenyra announced her massive bounty, countless men just like them have come looking, but they will not find their quarry here. She explains that the castle holds only an old man who churns the butter despite being blind in both eyes, the young boy who feeds the horses and the ghosts. Looking around the ancient stone walls, she remarks that the men clearly haven't learned the history of the fortress, reminding them that the laborers who built Harrenhal died there in chains, that the castle breathes, swallows the greedy and the heartless, and that its foundation stones were watered with the blood of men, leaving it always thirsty. The soldiers hear a strange, echoing noise and grow visibly frightened, allowing Alice to casually throw a stone into the darkness, sending a massive flock of birds bursting into the air. In the sudden confusion, the witch mysteriously disappears into thin air. The narrative transitions deep into the keep, where Aemon Targaryen lies trapped in a terrifying nightmare. Suddenly, the prince wakes with a frantic gasp, shouting for the figures to stay back. Breathing heavily, he confesses to an approaching Alice that his brother Aegon was right there in the room, his face on fire, clutching at him and dragging him down into the absolute darkness. Alice gently comforts the trembling prince, embracing him and whispering that it was only another dream. Aemon says quietly that Helaena predicted he would die, and that he has ruined everything, but Alice reassures him softly that his fate is not yet sealed. Deep within the Red Keep, the narrative enters the tense chambers of Queen Alicent Hightower. The Grand Maester arrives under cover of darkness to deliver a vital medicine, and Alicent thanks him deeply for his continued loyalty to her family. The Maester replies that he flatters himself to think he has always been a faithful servant to her grace, prompting Alicent to warmly call him a true friend. The Grand Maester's expression turns solemn as he warns her that the capital has a new queen, placing him under close scrutiny, and he admits that after today, he can no longer offer her secret assistance without making proper disclosures to the throne. Alicent nods in quiet resignation, allowing the Maester to bow and leave the room. Alicent then approaches her pregnant daughter, Helaena Targaryen, urgently trying to force her to drink the medicine. She warns her daughter that the child could be a boy, bearing Aegon's features, which would make the infant the exact image of Joffrey Valerion to Rhaenyra. She explains anxiously that Rhaenyra will have no choice but to kill the child to secure her throne, and if she stays her hand, she will take the baby away forever. Helaena quietly counters that Aemond is safe at Harrenhal, but Alicent shakes her head, stating he has vanished from the ruined castle entirely. Helena whispers softly that she has seen him in her mind, burning without fire, but Alicent pleads that if Aemon continues to threaten Rhaenyra's rule, the queen will use Helena's child as a political shield. Helena whispers her refusal, forcing Alicent to uncork the bottle and try to press it into her hands, begging her to take it for her own sake, asking her to think of it as a simple cup of tea. Helena answers that the draft is something far worse, but Alicent insists, telling her it is a blessing and a remedy, revealing that the Grand Maester used it to spare her from disgrace and ruin in her youth, just as it once saved Rhaenyra. Desperate to protect her daughter, Alicent asks if she truly wants to bear a child who will live as nothing more than a hostage or a pawn. Helena suddenly cries out, clutching her stomach protectively, screaming that the child is hers alone because she carried her in her own womb, fiercely refusing to let anyone take her baby away. The focus shifts to Rhaenyra's small council chamber, where the leadership of Team Black gathers to assess their fractured campaign. Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen sits at the head of the table, flanked by Daemon Targaryen, Mysaria, Lord Corlys Velaryon, and several prominent lords of the realm. One of the lords questions the tactical intelligence, asking what anyone could possibly want in Wendyish Town, prompting another council member to clarify that the threat is not directed at Wendyish Town itself, but rather at a small, vulnerable village sitting right on its outskirts. The small council immediately receives further urgent reports from the Riverlands campaign. A messenger explains that several loyal farms have been completely burned and the main road leading towards Sarsfield was brutally attacked, confirming that the monster Vhagar has returned to the skies. Rhaenyra attempts to downplay the strike, noting that Lord Darry remains their staunch ally and Aemon may simply be provoking them by burning a few minor farms, but Daemon replies dryly that a dragon has to eat. The discussion turns sharply to the green fugitives hiding within King's Landing, as advisors report that the targets are still at large, though the City Watch hopes to root them out soon, referencing a violent skirmish at the Dragon Gate last night that required horses to disperse the fighting smallfolk. A council member remarks sarcastically that the chaos might have been avoided if Mysaria had deployed her promised web of spies, or if the King Consort City Watch had shown a shred of restraint while chasing the self-proclaimed mistress of crime. Rhaenyra cuts through the bickering, demanding to know where Vhagar flew, but a scout answers that they followed the trail as quickly as possible only to find it completely cold, leaving Aemon hidden once again. Daemon shifts the focus to a secondary crisis, reporting that 2 of his gold cloaks were found dead in the streets this morning, both killed by an unknown hand with precise blades. Rhaenyra asks where the murders occurred, and the advisor replies that the targeted district has become a lawless realm unto itself, making it almost impossible to govern. Returning to the larger military threat, Rhaenyra states that Vhagar appeared precisely while Ormond Hightower was gathering his forces at Tumbleton, clearly indicating a hidden, coordinated purpose. Daemon grows restless, arguing that they shouldn't waste time hunting a fox that has gone to ground, declaring that if Rhaenyra refuses to burn the enemy with her own dragons, his army will root out the Hightower forces soon enough. At that moment, a fresh messenger arrives with news from Lord Tully's camp, confirming that their march has been severely slowed because Criston Cole's forces are systematically burning every river crossing before the army can reach them. Rhaenyra commands the scouts to return to the Riverlands immediately, ordering them to discover where Aemon hides and what he intends while taking no unnecessary risks. Baela Targaryen enters the chamber, exhausted, prompting a council member to suggest she stand down since she has hardly eaten or slept since her return this morning. Baela insists firmly that she is more than ready to fly, but Rhaenyra overrides her, stating she will be of no use if her eyes are weary and her dragon is exhausted, announcing she will send Daemon instead. Daemon agrees to fly, but notes he will leave only after he has dealt with the lethal business in the city, demanding that the deaths among the City Watch be accounted for. Baela repeats her willingness to fight, and a council member suggests that the Watchmen's deaths can be investigated by Ser Luther rather than requiring the attention of the crown. Daemon strongly disagrees, reminding the room that the gold cloaks are his men and the queen depends on them to secure her rule, especially now that their wages have been withheld by the treasury. With the debate closed, Daemon walks out of the chamber and Rhaenyra departs shortly after, bringing the tense meeting to an abrupt end. Moments after the council breaks, Rhaenyra confronts Daemon in a private corridor of the keep. The queen demands to know if she has somehow found herself back on Dragonstone, where her voice must constantly compete with his for authority. Daemon calmly replies that, on the contrary, he has done his absolute best to carry out her commands. Rhaenyra answers sharply, stating he does just enough to satisfy the literal letter of her orders, declaring she is in no mood for his games and asking what it says about her rule if he obeys only when it suits his own time and place. Daemon counters that she is the queen, meaning everything he does is executed in her ultimate interest. Rhaenyra snaps back that her interest is clear, but Daemon argues his goals match hers, claiming they still have time because Aemon has already fled from her once, leaving them in no immediate danger. Rhaenyra disagrees fiercely, stating there is treachery hidden somewhere in the city and she intends to uncover it. Daemon asks if she is merely seeking revenge, noting that while the gods know he doesn't begrudge her that, Revenge can wait while actual unrest threatens the capital. Rhaenyra defends her position, stating she never ordered Ser Luther to act with such public brutality, but Daemon replies that she didn't have to, asking if she will truly allow yourself to be provoked by simple taunts and a few painted insults on the city walls. Rhaenyra responds that the messages are far more than taunts, as they openly insult her sons and challenge her very legitimacy to rule. Daemon steps directly into her space, delivering a final reminder that she is the Queen of Dragons, and that her raw strength is her only true legitimacy, before turning his back and walking away. The narrative shifts deep into a dense, unforgiving forest where the deposed King Aegon II Targaryen and his companion make their grueling way through the wilderness. Frustrated, exhausted, and limping heavily, Aegon demands to know which way is west, but his companion admits he has no idea. After a tense silence, the companion looks at the broken king and states that he is not going back to the camp. Aegon replies that he isn't either, noting they have nowhere else to go. The companion points out that Vhagar was reportedly seen near Wendyish Town 2 days ago, but because her current location is unknown, Aegon decides they will march directly to Harrenhal, believing Aemond must have left a message or a sign they can trail. The companion warns the king that Harrenhal is 100 leagues away, the surrounding countryside is crawling with hostile rivermen, and the journey is a dangerous fool's errand. Aegon explodes in a sudden rage, but the companion presses further, asking what the crippled king will do if he actually finds his brother, reminding him that Aemond is cold, ruthless, and backed by a dragon, while Aegon is hungry, wounded, exhausted, and entirely alone. Aegon cuts him off with a furious scream, telling his companion to stop telling him what he cannot do, swearing that every single piece of misery he has suffered is entirely his brother's fault. Before the warrior himself, Aegon vows that he will find Aemond and kill him or die trying. Back within the Red Keep, the focus returns to Alicent's chambers, where Mysaria arrives unannounced to confront the former queen. Mysaria states that Alicent surely knows who she is by reputation, declaring it is now her distinct privilege to hear the whispers of the fortress, knowing exactly which guests the Hightowers receive and what gifts they bring. The White Worm notices a suspicious bottle sitting on the table and demands to see it. Alicent hands the draft over, explaining that her daughter has been deeply unwell and the Grand Maester was kind enough to bring the remedy to ease her suffering. Mysaria looks closely at the bottle, noting it remains completely full, and uncorks it to smell the lethal contents. Realizing her cover is blown, Alicent claims she was careless, admitting to her shame that she has suffered terrible headaches ever since Viserys died, a condition the queen herself knows well. Recognizing the silent accusation in Mysaria's eyes, Alicent snatches the bottle back, stating she will delay no longer, and drinks the entire contents in front of her enemy, coughing violently as she swallows the bitter medicine. After a long moment, Alicent says quietly that she must seem pathetic, but argues that Mysaria, of all people, understands the horrific indignities that women are forced to endure in this court, asking that the incident never be spoken of again. Mysaria gives a cold nod, promising she will say nothing to the queen. Alicent answers with quiet resignation, stating she is Rhaenyra's prisoner now, just as Mysaria once was, allowing the White Worm to offer a parting nod and slip out of the chambers. Meanwhile, the focus shifts back to the dense forest where Criston Cole marches his remaining soldiers through the brush. As the commander discusses tactical movements with a trusted officer, absolute chaos erupts within the ranks. The vanguard's horses begin to rear in panic, running directly into a hidden trap of sharp blades concealed beneath the mud. Iron caltrops and buried spikes slash deep into the horses' legs, causing several panicked mounts to break free and bolt into the trees, while others collapse into the dirt, writhing in agony. Seeing one of his primary horses suffering from a fatal wound, Cole draws his sword and delivers a swift, merciful blow to its neck, putting the animal out of its misery before ordering his men to abandon the road. In the heart of King's Landing, Daemon walks the tense streets alongside a trusted gold cloak guard. They discuss the growing threat of the mysterious infiltrator who has slipped past the city gates, systematically murdering members of the city watch one by one and leaving the garrison terrified. Suddenly, an alarm bell rings through the district, accompanied by urgent cries echoing from a nearby alleyway. Daemon and his guard rush toward the commotion, only to discover another horrific scene. 2 more loyal gold cloaks lie brutally murdered in the dirt, their throats cut clean, serving as grim evidence that the Phantom Killer has struck again under the prince's nose. The narrative returns to the quiet castle gardens, where Alicent walks over to join Helaena, who is sitting on a bench playing gently with her young child. Alicent sits beside her daughter, speaking in a strained, hushed whisper, telling her they must escape the Red Keep tonight. She explains that there is massive trouble brewing in the city, forcing Rhaenyra to send reinforcements to the streets, leaving their sector guarded by only a single sentry instead of 2. Helaena notices something missing from her mother's dress and asks about her necklace, prompting Alicent to reveal she traded the jewels to a maid who will help them flee. The former queen explains that a hidden door sits beneath Aemond's chambers, leading directly under the keep and beyond the castle walls. Helaena looks up, asking if it is the exact same passage the assassins used when they came to murder her young boy. Alicent nods solemnly, reassuring her that it has been sealed since that night, and since Bela will be away hunting on her dragon, they can disappear into the labyrinth of King's Landing. Helena hesitates, asking about Jihera, noting her room is heavily guarded and warning that if the baby cries out even once, their lives are forfeit. Alicent answers gravely that if the child makes a sound, it will all be over, suggesting the road ahead is too dangerous for the infant and pointing out that Rhaenyra will not harm a young girl who poses no threat to the throne. She argues it might be wiser to leave the child with her nursemaid, hoping they can send for her in the future, but Helena looks directly into her mother's eyes, tells her she looks away when she lies, and stands up to walk away, completely rejecting the plan. High above the landscape, the focus shifts to Rhaenyra's scouts. The skies open up as Baela Targaryen and Addam Velaryon guide their massive dragons down to the earth, completing a grueling aerial patrol ordered by the Queen. The two riders arrive at their designated outpost, their beasts breathing heavy streams of smoke as the siblings prepare to discuss their next strategic move against the Greens. Resting near their mounts, the two dragon riders look out over the horizon. Baela laments that it has been days since Vhagar was last spotted, noting the beast appears and disappears at will despite their relentless flights over the Trident for the last fortnight. She wonders aloud if Aemond has crossed into the Westerlands to hide among the Lannister mountains, where countless places offer perfect concealment. Addam replies with a warm smile, stating he will be happy to explore those peaks with her, but insists she get some sleep and food first. Baela remains consumed by worry, suggesting the prince may be traveling exclusively under cover of night. Addam tries to soothe her, but Baela answers sadly, stating the war is easy for him because the Queen views his dragon claim as a direct blessing from the gods. Addam reassures her that the losses they suffered were not her fault, but Baela lowers her eyes, admitting the Queen won't even look at her now. She confesses that her own pride drove her to fly, imagining herself as a hero who would turn the tide of battle, but now she is paying the price for her arrogance. She sighs, stating her written future as Queen has vanished, and predicts she will be married off to some old lord on Pike whose hoarded gold can help pay off Rhaenyra's massive wartime debts. Addam smiles, promising that if that day comes he will find her and they will fly away into exile together, but repeats that she must eat first, forcing a faint smile from the frustrated princess as he walks away. The focus shifts back to the haunted chambers of Harrenhal, where Aemond wakes with a violent start from another agonizing dream. He commands himself to wake up, only to find Alys Rivers standing nearby in the shadows. The witch quietly announces that she is gone, leaving Aemond confused as he replies that his dragon would never abandon him. Alys answers that she only knows the beast flew away during the night, suggesting the creature may have been afraid. Aemond looks around the bleak room, asking if he is a prisoner, before walking out onto a stone balcony where the distant roar of a dragon echoes through the clouds. Alys follows him onto the ledge as Aemond laments that without his beast, he is absolutely nothing. Alys gently corrects him, but the prince insists he must find her, noting the Queen is hunting her as well. Surprised by his words, Alys reveals that King's Landing has officially fallen to Rhaenyra's forces. Aemond shakes his head, stating he thought the siege was merely a dream, but Alys continues the grim report, explaining that the Queen claims Aegon is dead and that Aemond was the one who killed him. After a long, heavy silence, Aemond bitterly admits that his brother is gone because he would never let him live in peace, recalling how Aegon tormented him throughout their entire childhood. Alys remarks softly that, sometimes, the child who causes a mother the most grief is the very one she loves the most. Aemond turns on her, demanding to know who she truly is, and Alys answers simply that she is someone who has known profound grief. Deep in the wilderness, the narrative returns to Aegon and his companion as they struggle through the rough terrain. Exhausted and filled with deep despair, Aegon collapses onto the earth, calling himself a pathetic cripple with a dead dragon, declaring there is no possible way he can make it to Wendyish Town to kill his brother. The companion cautiously suggests they return to their hidden camp, warning that they cannot risk being discovered out here without protection before night falls. Aegon ignores the plea, his mind spiraling back to his childhood as he bitterly recalls how Aemond was always Criston Cole's favorite prodigy with a sword. He laughs mockingly, remembering how their father always pulled him away from the tournaments under some forgotten excuse, likely because he was terrified his firstborn son would fall off his horse. The Broken King spits that he was forced to sit in the stands and applaud his brother as a champion and a quiet scholar who was fluent in High Valyrian. His anger peaks as he states Aemond undoubtedly thought he was a terrible king, but asks what chance he ever had when his younger brother was given every advantage. He claims their mother always indulged the boy, loving poor, missing-eyed Aemond more, and yells that his brother has now destroyed him entirely. The companion finally snaps, delivering a brutal, honest truth, telling Aegon that ever since they left the capital, the king has done nothing but pity himself, reminding him that he flew drunk into a battle he was never meant to join. The companion points out that Aegon had every single advantage in life as the firstborn prince of the realm, backed by the finest tutors, the greatest knights, and a dragon so magnificent they named him after the sun itself. Looking the king dead in the eye, the companion declares that Aegon could have been truly great, but instead threw away his birthright to waste his life in laziness, chasing cheap pleasure, sleeping with anyone he desired, and drinking himself into oblivion alongside flattering companions. He delivers the final blow, stating Aegon was a terrible king, and worse than that, a terrible man. The focus shifts back to the capital, finding Rhaenyra praying silently before the altars of a grand September demon enters the sacred space, letting out a quiet, mocking laugh, but Rhaenyra immediately commands him to stop. Demon notes he came because he was told she was here, admitting he thought it was a mistake, but Rhaenyra answers that a show of reverence and respect is precisely what is required of her now. Demon asks if the display is intended for the small folk or for the seven themselves, and Rhaenyra answers it is for both, claiming there is no harm in trying to win their favor. Demon's expression hardens as he reports that 4 more of his watchmen are dead, bringing the total to 6 within 2 days, explaining that the gold cloaks are being systematically murdered the same way every time, with their throats slit and bellies cut open. Rhaenyra realizes her enemy is hiding in the shadows with a clear purpose, working against her rule from within. Demon notes the killings are happening in broad daylight without a single witness, suggesting a deep plot against the city watch itself. Rhaenyra looks toward the altar, declaring that while the High Septon may reject her, the gods themselves made her queen, sending her a dragon in her darkest hour. Demon dismisses the priests, stating the true gods have no need for Septons. Rhaenyra asks why the heavens have turned away from her, demanding to know who dares stand in her path, but Demon reminds her that because she is a woman, there will always be those who oppose her and want to see her fail. Rhaenyra paces anxiously, confessing they are blind because they cannot find Aemond or Aegon, have no certainty about Tumbleton, and are losing their gold and their army. She turns on Demon, taunting the bold and cunning warrior of 1,000 songs for standing there completely outmaneuvered by an invisible enemy. Demon gives a faint, knowing smile, tells her she is stronger than this, and leaves her alone in the light of the candles. The narrative returns to the escape attempt as Alicent and Helaena move through the shadows of the keep. A maid quietly opens a hidden door, whispering that the guard is gone, allowing the 2 women to step through into the dark corridor. Helaena asks if the nurse will meet them with Jaehaera, and Alicent promises she will, urging her forward. Before they can take another step, Mysaria steps out of the darkness to block their path, asking if they truly believed she wouldn't be watching, fixing her eyes on the pregnant princess. Alicent pleads for mercy, asking that Rhaenyra never hear of the flight, but Mysaria answers she will keep no more secrets from the queen. Alicent asks what the betrayal will accomplish, noting they are already at Rhaenyra's mercy and Helena's condition will soon become obvious to the entire court. Mysaria counters that the judgment is not hers to make, turning to leave, but Alicent calls after her, invoking the legendary stories of the White Worm who once dealt in extortion and forced powerful men to fear her. She reminds Mysaria that the old Master of Whispers was clever enough to play every side of a conflict rather than serving the queen like a loyal hound. Mysaria stops, calling those bold words coming from a high tower, but Alicent continues, urging her to think of her own survival because the crown is a crushing burden that will force Rhaenyra to do terrible things. She points out that the queen chose only one person to truly walk beside her long ago, and warns Mysaria that she may bask in the warmth of royal favor now, but it will last only as long as the whims of a volatile dragon rider. Helaena interrupts the political debate, stating softly that she wants to go outside. Alicent tells her not now, promising the window will have to do before offering Mysaria a final bargain, stating that if she stays silent, the Hightowers will remember the favor when the tides of war turn. Without a single word, Mysaria turns and walks away into the dark, leaving the mother and daughter stranded. Across the realm, 4 armed soldiers climb the rocky, desolate path leading up to Harrenhal, determined to collect the bounty on Aemond. At the top of the ridge, they find Alys Rivers standing completely alone. The lead soldier demands to know where the prince hides, but Alys calmly replies that the search has become tiresome, threatening to send a message to the queen herself to confirm the prince has never been here. The soldiers scoff, calling her a liar and mocking her as a madwoman wandering the castle. Alys stands her ground, asking if they would speak to her that way if their fortunes were different, prompting one of the men to grab her crudely, threatening to take her by force as his salt wife. Alys fights back instantly, striking the man in the groin and slapping another across the face. As the angry soldiers move to overpower her, Aemond suddenly emerges from the shadows. The prince throws his sword with lethal precision, killing one attacker instantly, before drawing a secondary blade to engage the remaining men. While one soldier holds Alys, Aemond engages the others in a fierce, rapid duel, cutting them down one by one until the attackers lie dead on the stone, leaving Alys to look at her rescuer with a faint smile, noting he has taken a spectacular turn for the better. The focus shifts back to Aegon as he sits resting on a high rocky ledge while his companion stays a short distance below. As the 2 men converse, a figure emerges from the treeline behind them, the same small folk thief who had previously forced the injured king to bow and touch his foot in submission. The rogue sneaks up to Aegon's abandoned bag, opening it to find the golden royal crown gleaming inside. Holding the prize aloft, the thief calls out the king's name, alerting Aegon to the theft. The moment the king realizes his birthright has been taken, he lunges forward with a hidden dagger, driving the blade deep into the thief's chest. As the man collapses, Aegon looks down at him coldly, telling him he may call him your grace, before leaving the corpse in the dirt. Back in the capital, Daemon stands before a frightened, angry assembly of the city watch. The guards clash among themselves, shouting that they are being hunted like animals, until one veteran officer yells at them not to shame themselves because they will find these cowards and make an example of them. Another guard mutters that the hunters get paid while the streets are no longer safe, causing the men to argue violently until Daemon steps forward and commands them to be silent. The prince addresses the garrison, reminding them that they are the sole protectors of the greatest city in Westeros, and that without the city watch, King's Landing would instantly fall into absolute chaos and lawlessness. He demands they honor the sacred oath they swore to their city and queen, promising they will be rewarded twice over with the spoils of conquest when victory is achieved. The guards cheer in response, allowing Daemon to issue his final orders, commanding them to patrol the city exclusively in groups of 3 or 4 so no man walks alone. Meanwhile, the narrative transitions to Criston Cole's army as they finally reach their destination at the river crossing. The soldiers halt in absolute despair as they discover the bridge has been completely destroyed. An officer reports that the rivermen crossed first and burned the structure behind them, meaning they can no longer delay the enemy's march, forcing an exhausted soldier to turn away, muttering that they have failed. Cole stands in absolute silence, staring at the smoking ruins as the reality of his defeat sets in. Inside the city barracks, Daemon brutally interrogates a captured watchkiller who has already lost an eye to the torture. Pressing a dagger close to the prisoner's face, Daemon demands to know how many infiltrators are working within the walls, but the screaming man swears he acts entirely alone. Daemon asks who gave the order, threatening to cut out his tongue and take his remaining eye, forcing the panicked prisoner to blurt out that he was carrying out the king's work. Daemon questions if he means Aegon, but the man shakes his head violently, telling the guards to look inside his boot. A guard extracts the proof, revealing a gift linked directly to the rising influence of Daeron Targaryen's faction for killing traitors. Having uncovered the conspiracy, Daemon offers a silent gesture to his executioner, who swiftly beheads the prisoner to end the session. Meanwhile, the focus shifts back to Cole's camp by the ruined river. Wayne Hightower approaches the commander, suggesting they return to Tumbleton to learn what Ormond has planned, noting they gave their best effort and survived against the odds. Cole refuses the retreat, announcing they will cross the deep river on makeshift rafts and meet the enemy host in open battle. Gwaine objects fiercely, calling the plan certain death because they have lost half their men and face hundreds of rivermen for every single green soldier, asking quietly if suicide was Cole's plan all along. Cole looks out over the water, admitting their fate was sealed the moment they began the campaign, as they were always marching toward death. Gwaine states he offered him sanctuary within his house, but Cole replies that he has lived his entire life as a servant to great lords who raised him up only when it suited their ambitions. The commander declares with quiet intensity that he will not let them diminish him now, vowing that he is the realm's greatest warrior and he will die like one, clear-eyed, unbending and loyal in battle under his own terms, ensuring Queen Alicent herself hears of his final hour. The final sequence of the episode plunges into the dark, subterranean tunnels beneath the capital. Alicent and Helena navigate the pitch-black stone passages using a single torch, desperate to find a way out of the castle. After a long, terrifying march, they finally reach what should have been the exit, only to discover that the heavy stone passage has been completely blocked from the outside, leaving them trapped in the dark. Simultaneously, the focus shifts to Daemon as he descends into the deep, forgotten corridors of the keep, holding a torch high with his sword drawn. The prince calls out for his captain of the guard, but receives only echoing silence. He cautiously enters a hidden chamber, and the torchlight reveals a horrific massacre. 9 or 10 of his finest gold cloaks have been systematically slaughtered, their bodies arranged across the room alongside his trusted captain. Written across the stone wall in thick, fresh blood is the terrifying message: a feast for traitors. Daemon stands frozen, staring at the grim warning as the shadows close in around him, bringing the episode to a chilling conclusion.